Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Is my voice audible?
Yes, Krishna.
Yeah, so awesome. So I welcome everyone to our webinar. So it's a pleasure to have Suresh in the webinar. So most of you would know about Suresh, but let me give a brief introduction. Suresh Ramdas is an out gay man who works in HP. He started his career at HP in 2004 and he has worked in various roles. He is currently the global training lead and also heads the Pride Business Impact Network chapter for HP India and is also the communication lead for the Global Pride Business Impact Network at HP. His passion in making his workplace more LGBT inclusive and have a broader understanding of the DNI spectrum motivated him to do a program and is now a certified diversity professional by DTUI USA in collaboration with Interweave India. Along with that, he is the first Indian to be nominated and represent HP at the Out and Equal Workplace Advocates Global Fellowship Program 2017. So I welcome you again, Suresh. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Krishna. All right, so very warm welcome to everybody who's joined in the webinar. Thank you so much. I'd also like to go ahead and take this opportunity to thank GiftAbled team to invite me for this webinar to be hosting on the LGBT, or which is the Pride Inclusion in the industry. So with that being said, just wanted to go ahead and talk to you about this very lovely statement by Harvey Milk, "Hope will never be silent." I think this is something that I strongly believe in, that the more we talk and the more you discuss about this, things will be a much better place. So that's why I really, this statement really resonates a lot. So with that being said, for the ones who do not know me, hello everybody, I'm Suresh Ramdas. And as Krishna went ahead and gave an amazing introduction to myself, so just want to say that I work for HP India. I've been there for the last 13 and a half years, and I also head the LGBT chapter in India. So with moving on quickly, I will get into the agenda. So since this is the first time that there is a discussion about LGBTQ, in this webinar, so my thought was just to give everybody in the audience a brief about what LGBT is all about, and how do you really understand, as a community who we really are. And I think the most important part is, what is the law of the land for the LGBT people? I'm for sure there's a lot of questions or comments or, doubts that are going to be around that. So hopefully I'll be able to clear that. And last but not the least, why do we need to be LGBT inclusive, like gender or peoples with disability, right? So it's just to kind of give the audience an understanding as to, why do we need to be inclusive. And we'll wrap it up with question answers. All right. So moving on with that, what does it mean to be, or what does it mean LGBTQ? Ever since it started off, LGBT now has been expanding and it's been growing a lot, with a lot of understanding about the sexuality and the whole gender expression and all of that. So for for starters, let's understand what does it mean. So L, as it says, states means lesbian. That means where a woman likes another woman. Gay is used for men who like men. Bisexuals are the ones who are attracted to both sexes, and transgender is another. So there are people who are biologically male, but they transition to the opposite sex. All right, and then Q stands for queer or questioning, where they're still not sure who they truly are. So you put them, or they consider themselves, they don't want to be called as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. So this, term or word called queer or questioning has come in. Intersex, again, people or humans who are born with both body parts of the male and the female in regards to the genitals are a small percentage. We also bring them into the umbrella. And A is called asexual, but we also go ahead and use this abbreviation for as an ally, where people who support and stand for the LGBT community, we also address that. Now, there are a lot more other things, like some of them call it LGBTQIA+. So plus also has a meaning where they're trying to get everybody under the same umbrella, or even there is in certain places where they go ahead and consider this to be for HIV positive people, wherein they want to go ahead and be more inclusive. All right, so this is the meaning of LGBTQ. So with that being said, let's move on to understand this diagram, which is called the gingerbread person, right? So there is going to be a lot of questioning as to how we are, what is our mental makeup, what does our heart really desire, and how do we really express that out, right? So let me start off with the first point, which is sex, right? So you do, as it clearly says, the biological, state that when a person is born, so then you identify through their private parts. Right, so that's when you identify as male, female, or intersex. Okay, now here also, there is no ambiguity, and so it's kind of understandable. So that is what nature has, got them into. Now, if you have to go to the next option, which is called the identity. So, before that, I just want to pause in and say that sex and gender are not the same, right? So they're different. Sex is the biological point of a person, right? While gender is, again, predominantly a social-driven process, the way how a male should behave or a female should behave, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, right? So in regards to that, gender identity is somebody who identifies themselves or who they really are. Okay, it need not be in line or in sync with their biological sex. All right, the same goes in for gender expression as well. Feminine, masculine. So that's how, again, they have broadly defined it as, but there is a spectrum. All right, we need to understand that. And then last but not the least, you have the attraction, right? So some people who are sexually attracted and romantically attracted also are a part of this whole spectrum. So people who are attracted to the same sex, they would probably, they would fall under lesbian or gay. And who are attracted to both, as I defined previously, they're bisexuals, right? And people who are not sexually attracted to anybody and also romantically not attracted to anybody, they're asexuals, right? So you have a definition, a lot of definition around, sexual attraction, romantically attracted to certain people, and your gender identity and expression. So this specific picture, I think it kind of really sums up what is it and what is not. Gender is a spectrum, and it is not just male or female, right? And gender is a range of expression, while gender is not defined by body parts, right? So that's why, as I mentioned previously, sex and gender are not the same. While gender is how you relate to yourself, right? So what is it that you really believe in? While gender is not sexual orientation. And gender, again, comes into a personal identity, while your gender is not defined by chromosomes. All right? So I hope this was quite clear to people. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. All right, so moving on next, we need to understand what is the law in India. Everybody thinks it is illegal to be gay or bisexual or lesbian, but now that there is a new law that's come up for the trans community, so wherein they are identifying them as a third gender and they've given them certain privileges, right? But then that is still under question. Some of them say it's against the law, and some of them say it's not an Indian culture, right? To give everybody a perspective, we were very diverse and inclusive of anybody and everybody prior to the British coming into India. And ever since they brought in this Section 377, they have gone ahead and removed that whole spectrum of, of identifying people or understanding or accepting people for who they are. Now, if somebody says it's against the Indian culture, I would like to understand why is it against the Indian culture, because if you look back in history or if you look back in any of the transcripts, we were very inclusive of everybody. Now, Britishers came in, ruled us for a long time, and this is what they brought in, where it clearly states that as per Section 377 Indian Penal Code, whoever voluntarily has carnal intercourse against the order of nature with any man, woman, or animal shall be punished with imprisonment of for life, or with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years, or shall also be liable to fine. So this is what the law clearly states that. Now, the law will really come into effect only if somebody registers or has seen two people engaging in a carnal intercourse which is against the law order of nature, which means that anything which is non-procreative act is considered to be unnatural. All right, so it doesn't define it has to be only between the same sex. It can be also between opposite sex as well, right? And in this law, it nowhere even talks about the fact that if you identify yourself to be lesbian or gay or bisexual or asexual or queer or intersex or transgender, you will be booked under Section 377. It doesn't say that, right? So that is why in India, if you see, there are a lot of, people coming out and identifying themselves to who they truly believe in. And at the same time, we do have Pride marches and Pride events happening across India. That is from an outside perspective, but from a perspective of, in corporates, we do have employee resource groups which do, understand and create a safe space environment for all the employees to whoever they identify. So just to give a little more understanding, I can still go out and shout out loud in the middle of a road saying that I am gay. I will not be booked under Section 377. But yes, I will be booked under a specific law for nuisance, but it will never be under Section 377, right? So to get this understanding clear, it is only the act which is punishable by law and not whom you really identify with. All right. And it is not only for the LGBT community; it is for everybody. But yes, it is more prone or going towards the LGBT community because of the fact is it talks about non-procreative sex, which a lot of them from the community would probably engage in. Right, so they're kind of, for that is one reason. The other reason is most of them are not out of the closet, or they're not really identify and tell everybody who they really are. So that's why, there's a lot of issues coming around. But at the same time, we also do have the rights to privacy, which clearly goes against Section 377, stating that whatever happens within somebody's private time, it's not to be questioned. And recently, the Supreme Court also went ahead and asked the government to give their opinion based on, a case that was being submitted by the Hotelier Keshav of Lalit Ashok Group. Right, so there is a lot of hopes, and as again, go back to Harvey Milk, hope will never be silent if we keep pushing that on. So we are quite hopeful that there would be a change, but if not, we still continue to do the fight. And that's where corporates really come in, because end of day, whatever happens in the confinement of the office organization, so they can't really provide a good working space. Right, so the law also doesn't stop any corporates to start their own employee resource groups and cater to a lot of their employees. But yes, there is a lot of confusion and not understanding as to, should we really step into this segment of the population to really help them out or be supportive. But, a lot of companies are really taking that bold step, because a lot of the other employees are also coming out and talking to their management, saying that they need a safe space to be more inclusive. So with that being said, I want to quickly say, why do we need to have an organization being LGBT inclusive? Now, there is this research and finding where people have mentioned that 10 to 13% of the world's population is from the LGBTQ community, which means out of every 100, there are 13 people who are from the community. So you can go back and do the math for your company, the company number of employees that you all have in your organization. 10 to 13% of them are from the community. They will not identify themselves because of the fact that they may be either closeted, or your organization does not provide those benefits or policies around the community members for their safety, right? It could be in any form, right? So we need to understand that that's one of the reasons why we need to be more inclusive. And people from the community, love to bring their whole self to work. For example, even if I have to talk about my personal story, wherein I was not out initially because I was quite skeptical, but that also affected my work. My personal life, was always being questioned, so I was not very engaging at work. And, I was stepping into the fact that what is everybody else thinking about me? That's where the energy went, rather than focusing at work, right? So ever since I'm out, it's been different. It's been very, how do I say? The words don't come in at the right time. But it's been very empowering for myself, and also to everybody else, to who I really am. I've been authentic after coming out. The authenticity, the trust, the respect that I've got after that has been tremendous, because that's telling people that truly who I am. So after that, I think my work has gone better, and it's been more awesome, I would say. All these factors also do really tend to bring in a person. It's not something that you can see, but it's something that you can really, figure out by the way the person is. And since a lot of people are closeted, so it becomes very difficult to really, put yourself out there. I've been talking about the fact that providing a safe space to the employees who are from the community, that is very important, because only when you provide a safe space to your employees will they feel very comfortable in being themselves, creating a culture which is more inclusive, creating a space where the conversations are very gender neutral. Like, say, for example, you encourage people using partners rather than using wives or spouses. That is something which is very nice. And, so when you talk about being inclusive, you also talk about, bringing in your partners to events which are hosted in the offices or even outside. All those, small things really make a difference, and that is how you can be truly inclusive. And the need for that is loyalty, and employee morale is always high when you bring in all this for the community. And last but not the least, I would like to also talk about the trans community, where we do have a law also for them, calling out the trans community and telling them that we need to start identifying and giving them the opportunities in the corporate space. Right, so supporting trans community or the transgender people is very important for this time, which will get them off the streets and put them in the corporate space, and at the same time get out of a lot of unwanted habits which they are forced to get into because they need to earn their daily bread and butter. Right, so this is what we really need to do, and the reason for being inclusive are all these points. How do we be inclusive is going to be a question on how to get in the policies in place, get in gender-neutral restrooms, create as much awareness as possible at your organizations when you really want to be LGBT inclusive. And the end result of being inclusive for LGBT community, you cannot put that in numbers or words, right? So, for example, if you have to talk about in gender, if you want to be more inclusive on a gender aspect, so you can put a number saying that we hired X number of females into the organization, or they grew from one level to the other. You can say the same even for people with disabilities, right? But for LGBT community, we shouldn't have a metric where it mentions that, oh, we had 10% of the population, or 5% of the population came out as LGBT. We shouldn't, be going in that direction, but we should be going the direction of making more awareness, creating more awareness, and making a safe space where it is very comfortable for people to be who they are and talk about certain things which they are quite comfortable without being judged. So these are some of the things that we really need to focus if we want to make our place more LGBT inclusive. All right. So with that being said, do you all have any questions? I know it was short and sweet, but if you all do have any questions, please feel free to ask. Krishna, I'm not sure if there are any questions on the chat or...
Hi, Suresh. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi. So, Suresh, this is Prateek. One quick question, and that's something which you even alluded to, is the case to repeal 377, Section 377. Supreme Court has again taken it up, right? So, so is this something wherein, as of now, that Section 377 is kind of on hold, and no one can be I mean, in the sense that earlier it was supposed to go back to Parliament for amendment, right? I mean, if I'm not wrong, now again Supreme Court is doing the same thing which they had done earlier, wherein they will again hear it and then they will take a decision, or is it something which they will again push to Parliament?
Well, initially they went ahead and pushed it to Parliament and said you all need to, figure something out. But I think the same conversation is coming up with, the case, the filing that has been done by Keshav, saying that what is it that is happening on Section 377, because the Supreme Court did ask, the government to take it up and bring it on to Parliament and, do the whole process. But now there is nothing that has been done. So there's, the Supreme Court has asked the government to really give them what is it that they're doing on this within a week's time. So they should give us some answer to it, as the government should respond to the Supreme Court talking about it.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I mean, one more question which I had was around intersectionality. I'm not sure. Does that fall under LGBT, or is it something which is outside of that? With my limited knowledge.
Okay, so intersectionality again comes in, with any of the groups that is being formed, because you would always find, say for example, if you're working on gender, I mean, there are women there, you want to uplift the women, but then you also need to look at people who can fall into the LGBT community also. The women can be bisexuals or lesbians, or even the trans community, where the men have transitioned to women, so the transgender women, right? So they can, if they identify themselves to be women. So there is intersectionality in that. Also, you do have people with disabilities who are also lesbian, gay, bisexual, or asexual, or questioning, right? So there is so much of intersectionality happening in all the groups. Right, so when we really consider bringing a policy out, it has to, cater to everybody. So that's why we keep addressing and telling people that try and make it more gender-neutral policies, so that anybody from any group, can really adapt themselves to, which also includes millennials. Right, so you do have the millennial, the young bunch, who are a lot more forward-thinking and are aware about themselves as to who they really are from a very young age. So, we need to cater to them as well. And then if you look at it also one step ahead, what about the armed forces, like the war veterans? So we also do have intersectionality in that aspect also. So any minority groups come in, we need to ensure that we cater to everybody by having policies or, a process around gender neutral items.
Cool. Thank you.
I hope that answered your question, Pradeep.
Yes, Suresh. Thank you.
And Suresh, there's a question from Sudeep. So it is, how do we create an environment where employees can come up and speak? For starters, will a proper EAP help, or should there be any engagement or policies help?
I would say it is, we need to do simultaneously. First and foremost, we cannot go ahead and ask our employees how many of them are openly out, because they're a little scared of how people are going to judge them and perceive them. So creating awareness is one of the key factors. It can be from a top-down approach, where the management really talks about it and drives that conversation in every aspect or every form of conversations that they have. And bringing in, people from outside the organization who are okay and out to talk about this would also be a great starting point. And at the same time, we build in policies, which are very gender neutral. Right, basic policies could be, changing certain words, like instead of calling them spouses or husband or wife, saying partners in some of your policies. And also, if required, the next step would be working with the medical insurance to provide same-sex partner benefits or domestic partner benefits. Right, so to bring in even Pratik's point here into intersectionality, now if you see, a lot of people at times do not believe in marriages. They prefer live-ins, but then they are not married. So how do you identify or support them, right? So domestic partnership is something which is again a gender neutral term which can be used by people who are not married but they are living in together, right? So we need to kind of look at what our policies state right now and make it as gender neutral as possible, and that is one talking point. And take it from there, bring in your conversations from the leaders saying that why they really believe in being more inclusive, what are the benefits of being inclusive. And once they bring in that, you start the conversation, awareness, to the employees. And also, everybody knows about the LGBT people. Why don't we even strongly build our ally network? We need to have our allies coming out in support in the open, saying that, I am an ally for the LGBT community, and talk about support. Openly talking about it, in the form of a logo or a tag, something that, tells everybody that he's an ally for the community. And this in turn brings a little bit of, a good vibe for the people who are from the community, who are closeted, but also looking at all of these allies, they would feel more comfortable and, feeling safe that I'm not going to be judged. Right. For a simple example is that we had this drive in HP India where we had allies, building allies. So we gave them lanyards which were of the Pride flag, and most of them, or anybody who wears them, we know that they are an ally. So it would be a safe space to go talk to them, or if they are around us, we would feel safe. Right? And at the same time, all these allies should really start educating others, stop, if there are any homophobic jokes going around, they need to stop. Again, coming back to intersectionality, even from a gender aspect, from people with disabilities aspect, from young employee network aspect, we all are allies for everybody. We all should be allies for everybody. Right? So if there is something that is not going right, then we need to talk it out. We need to speak up, right? That's how people around are going to be confident and, felt safe. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Suresh.
No problem.
It was a wonderful insight about the whole subject, and yeah, thank you everyone for attending the webinar. So I think we can end it up now. Thank you very much, Suresh.
All right, great. So
hosting.
Yeah. And once again, thank you so much, Prateek, Pratana, and Krishna, and the entire GiftAbled team to really bring this topic forward. All right, and the audience who joined in, I think joining in itself talks about the fact that you all want to know and want to make your place more LGBT inclusive. So thank you so much for taking that first step.
Thank you, Suresh. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
Suresh.
all the participants.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.